Let me know when we're good to go. Okay, Chair Coburn, we're good to go.
Thanks, Carly. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Climate Action Committee meeting. This is November 19th, 2 o'clock, and I'll call the meeting to order. We will begin with the land acknowledgement statement, if I may. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. So, looking at the agenda, are there any additions or revisions to the agenda that anyone would like to bring forward? Being none, I'll ask for someone to make a motion to approve the agenda as it currently stands. Thank you, Danuta. All in favor? And that carries. Looking at the minutes of the previous meeting of November 5th, 2021, the recommendation is that the minutes of this meeting of the Climate Action Committee be approved. Can someone make a motion to put that on the floor? Thank you, Luke. Is there any discussion about the minutes? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of approval of those minutes? Thank you, and that carries. Please feel free to declare any pecuniary interest now or at any time during the course of the meeting. I don't see any delegations, and I know Carly will jump right in here if there's something I'm not aware of. Under correspondence, item number 7.1 is the Climate Action Committee schedule for 2022 being updated to reflect that this committee will meet the third Thursday of each month at 10 a.m. And we discussed that at the last meeting, so that's just there for your information. And then, oh, sorry, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Just wondering if staff are going to be sending out an invitation that'll allow us to get that into our schedules rather than putting it all in individually if sales.
Thank you. Good point. Carly?
So the plan is to send out those links for the entire year. In the new year, once we return from the Christmas office closure, or even before then. And then, like I do in advance of these meetings, I will recirculate the link for the committee members.
Perfect. Thank you. Did I see another hand up regarding this particular item, Bob?
Yeah, I think when I read it, I think I looked at this stuff Monday night. It's been a while ago, but I think some of the dates were actually maybe from July on were 2021, and they should be 2022. I think. No big deal.
Gotcha. Yes, you are correct. From July to December 2021. So Carly, I imagine you'll get that revised.
Absolutely. Thanks for catching that.
Excellent. Anything else in regards to that item? No? Okay. Staff reports. So moving on to the operational update from the Director of Operations. I didn't think I saw Steve logged on here, but perhaps he is. Carly, can you let us know?
So I believe Steve
isn't Stephen away this week?
He is not, but Steve as well as Brittany are in another meeting, so I believe they'll be late. I suppose it's okay to skip over this item, and if he is able to join us, we can refer back to that.
Okay, that makes sense. 8.2 is particularly important, I would think, to this committee, and that's reviewing the RFP recommendation for development of the corporate climate action plan. So if it's okay with members of the committee, we will defer that until later in the meeting when we have staff back to discuss. Okay with everyone? Okay. Bob? Oh, that's good. Awesome. Okay. Any questions from the public, Carly?
No, there are none.
Okay. Moving down to unfinished business, we had 2 notices of motion brought forward at the last meeting, and they are written here for us to consider. 10.1 is a notice of motion regarding the development of a township tree cutting bylaw. And there's some excellent examples that have been provided to us probably from the clerk's office, which we appreciate. And so there is a recommendation, and I will read it, and then hopefully someone will move that so that we can open this up for discussion, but prior to voting to approve it or not. But the recommendation is as follows. Whereas the Township of Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Committee discussed tree protection measures at their meeting on November 5th, 2021. And whereas the Climate Action Committee has been established to assist Council in developing recommendations, actions, policy direction, and strategic priorities relating to the Climate Action Plan and climate crisis. And whereas continued sustainability of Ontario's forest resources is imperative to maneuvering said crisis and the planning process. And whereas Section 135(2) of the Municipal Act, SO 2001 C25 as amended, permits the enactment of a bylaw by municipal councils to prohibit or regulate the destruction or injuring of trees in woodlands. And whereas Section 135(7) of the Municipal Act as amended permits council to require that a permit be obtained to harvest, injure, or destroy trees in woodlands specified in the bylaw and impose conditions on a permit, including conditions relating to the manner in which destruction occurs and the qualification of persons authorized to harvest, injure, or destroy trees. And whereas trees within the township are valued for the economic, social, environmental benefits they provide, such as increased aesthetic and property values, shade, contributions to physical and psychological well-being, maintenance and enhancement of water quality, prevention of soil erosion and water runoff, wildlife habitat, local moderation, and improved air quality. Now, therefore, the Township of Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Committee hereby recommends that the Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs enact a bylaw to regulate the destruction or injury of trees within the township on both public and private lands, and that Council direct staff to prepare a report and draft bylaw for review and comment of the committee prior to presentation to Council. Could I have someone make a motion to put that on the floor? Carly, I see your hand up. Maybe I'll go to you first in case procedurally I have done something wrong.
Oh, no, I just wanted to note for the committee's information that both items 10.1 and 10.2 will be included on the December 1st council agenda. If the committee wants to make any changes to these proposed motions, by all means.
Okay. So does it, I guess it makes sense to consider them separately, Carly, if that's okay, but thank you that for adding that will be addressed in the December, you said December 1st council meeting?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
just a mover and a seconder for each motion.
Got you. Okay. Danuta and John. Danuta's moving, John is seconding. I believe I'm understanding that correctly. No, I'm sorry, John may have a question or a comment.
I did. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I did have a quick question and wondered if at this point we should or would put in something about the sequestration importance of trees in the context of air quality. I mean, it's directly linked to that from a medical standpoint, or is that something we would just leave? Because I realize it's not yet enacted in law and legislation, but I believe it's coming. So it's just a question of procedure, really.
I see Anne has her hand up. So just in response to that recommendation by John, Anne, do you have a comment?
Yeah, so first of all, it's a question, I think, for Carly in terms of procedure. So do we need to actually kind of do a motion for this notice of motion? And then we can actually have a discussion around whether we want to amend it, or is now the time to have the discussion around amendments?
So we'll need a mover and seconder to put the motion on the table.
Yes.
Then discussion is permitted, and any proposed amendments to this motion can then be proposed. So if there are amendments, then we would just move to amend the present motion that's on the table.
Right, and that's, sorry, I thought that's what we had when I saw Danuta waving her hand and John with his hand up. I thought we had a mover and a seconder in order to put these notices of motion or this notice of motion on the table for discussion. So I will, just for clarity's sake, can I ask for someone to move to put this on the floor, please? Thank you, John, and a seconder. Thank you, Danuta. Awesome. Okay, so then going back to John's remark, let's talk about adding that. It would be added to the paragraph that outlines the value of trees and why they're valued within our municipality, and adding sequestration of carbon and storage of carbon to that paragraph. Danuta?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair Coburn. Yeah, I'm taking it that the last line where we talk about moderation and improvement of air quality is probably referring to that, but it just seemed a little vague to me too, that somehow that and perhaps it needs to be highlighted a little bit further up the list. But the other thing I wanted to know was whether or not we would also want to see any not only regulation around destruction and injuring of trees or removal, but also restoration for what is lost in carbon sequestration and canopy cover, et cetera, as part of that bylaw, or do we need another bylaw for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Carly, is that something you can answer in terms of I'm not sure that if that would fall under an enforcement or a bylaw enforcement amendment, or could that be included in this particular policy?
I'm not entirely certain of that answer, so I apologize. I am happy to go back and get a recommendation from the clerk and or the bylaw enforcement department about that and bring it back to the committee.
The examples that are provided of a similar policy in other municipalities, I have read them, but as John said, it's been a few days and I've forgotten. Did they refer to repairs and even fines and those kinds of things within this bylaw? Anyone want to refresh my memory? John?
I like you have read this and I'm revisiting it, Madam Chair, so I can't answer that. I just had my hand up because I had another question.
Okay, so remind me to get back to you, John, but I think we need to deal with the addition, so amending this motion to add the importance of sequestering and storing carbon in that one paragraph. Carly, procedurally, should we have a vote on amending that first so that we can then move on to the next issue, which is repairs to damage done? Or do you want to do it as all an entire amendment package and list several amendments?
Yes, we could do all the amendments now.
Okay.
So if you wanted to continue discussion, that is fine by me.
Okay, so can I just see a nod of heads or a wave of hands if we're in agreement to adding the value added piece regarding carbon sequestration? Everyone's good with that? Okay, perfect. All right. So now moving on to the issue of making repairs. Were there any other, did anyone else want to make comment about including that in the bylaw? I'm going to go to you next, Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Chair Coburn. Yes, I just managed to get to read everything this morning, and the other bylaws around trees include that. What the consequences are of cutting without a permit, what the fines would be imposed. And so I think if we're really asking to have our tree bylaw put in place or amended, because I don't remember if we even have one at this point,
No, we don't.
I would think that that comes back as part of that full bylaw. The County of Grey, when I read theirs, it includes that type of thing in there as to what the consequences are. So I think that would just be a standard part of that full bylaw.
Makes sense. Okay, Danuta.
Thank you. Maybe this is something that may not be included in the others. And I'm afraid I've been rushing and running and haven't read them all thoroughly. So not only we're asking that if people are fined or penalized in some way or must do some action if they do not abide by the regulations of the bylaw, would it also be something that would it also address what the regulations involve? The regulations involve a restoration, not just how much they can take away.
I'm not 100% sure I'm understanding your, what regulations are you referring to? Danuta?
If the bylaw says you may receive this percent, you may reduce or take away this percentage of trees on this lot, are they then required to do some remediation in order to replace what is lost so they haven't violated anything unless they take more than they're allowed to do. I'm reading it as a regulation saying this is how much you can take away, and the penalties imposed only imply if they take away more than that.
Right. Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe Meaford has had to step back on that percentage for a variety of reasons that I don't necessarily understand or have read. But so yeah, so my understanding is we're providing notice of motion to our council.
Yes.
And the council will then direct staff to write a report. So all of these details should come out in the staff report. So although the notice of motion isn't going to capture every detail of what the bylaw is going to say, the report should. And that report will be written by staff with input from bylaw enforcement and the planner, I imagine, as well as the director of operations. And so I think some of those questions will be answered for us when they write up that detailed report. And according to this notice of motion, that report will come back to us for review and comment back to this committee before it goes to council. So I guess I'm concerned about wading too much into the details when we're likely to get it in the staff report. But having said that, I think these are all really good points to pass on to staff so that when we get the report, they are addressed and we don't have to recommend it be sent back for a second draft. Does that make sense? Carly, would you like to comment at this point?
Yes, I just wanted to note that I concur with Chair Coburn. I am happy to record all of these suggestions within the minutes. And if you wanted to send your concerns or additional considerations for that report to myself and Trevor, we would be happy to send those along to the staff person who will be writing the report.
That sounds reasonable to me. Does that work for everyone else? Yeah, I think we're so keen. We're just trying to second guess maybe what the report's going to say, but I think it's fair that we get our ideas down. Maybe send them to Carly as well if you think of some after the fact so that they don't get missed. Other comments or questions? Going to Member Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Colburn. I want to reiterate what John said about carbon sequestration, and in some ways I want to lead with that one in terms of the benefits of trees, given that this is a recommendation coming from the Climate Action Committee. So I think it's an important one to lead with. The other comment I want to make, and I feel like I'm now talking from the other side, and that is Georgian Bluffs is a community with a lot of wood burners. And my worry would be having a policy that means that every person that needs to cut a bit of wood to burn for their winter heat has to go for a permit. And I don't know how that's going to work, and I don't know how other municipalities address that, but I think that's an important consideration to take into account, particularly from a needing to promote the concept of climate change. And we don't want to kind of make it so rigid that we're going to have every wood burning household up in arms because of the Climate Action Committee saying that you need to get a permit now to burn wood or cut down a rotting tree in your backyard. So that's a comment that I think needs to be taken into account as the policy is developed.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I think I speak for all of us that we don't want this policy to be so restrictive that people feel as though it may have a detrimental effect on their rights and their well-being as well. So I'm sure Carly's made note of that. Thank you. I think we've established that we will be leading with the carbon piece in terms of an amendment to this particular notice of motion. And we'll go next to Member Carlton.
Thank you, Chair Coburn. Just in response to what Anne was bringing up about people cutting wood for their personal use, I noted in the Meaford bylaw and in the County of Grey one, when I went and looked at it, that both of those allow for that if you are cutting trees or wood on your own property for your own personal use, you don't need a permit.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. And over to you, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also wonder if in our notice of motion that we want to include the fact that we will be working closely with the county to ensure the best approach that our bylaws are aligned with the county's policy.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I'm pretty sure our staff in developing new policies or bylaws always take the Grey County official plan and their bylaws with which we have to adhere into account. Yeah. Fair point, though. Okay, over to you, Member Vallow. Nope, that was from before. Anyone else have any comments about this notice of motion? I don't see any. Carly, do you have everything you need for this?
I believe so. Just for confirmation, were we including a piece about the County of Grey, or how was the committee feeling about that?
I mean, I don't suppose it would hurt. Normally, I think it's kind of a given that we wouldn't develop a policy that contravenes the upper tiers policies and regulations, but maybe it doesn't hurt either. Comments regarding that, Member Carlton?
Thank you, Chair Colburn. My suggestion there would be to, when we bring this notice of motion forward at that December meeting, include a link to the county's bylaw on trees as well. And the rest of council can read that and see exactly what we're comparing to, what we're looking at doing. That would be my suggestion anyway. Give that link. Ours doesn't have to mirror it exactly, but it can be a basis there.
Yeah, that can be part of the supporting documents behind the motion. Does that work for you, Carly?
Yes, that's great. And just to confirm, really the only amendment was adding the sequestration of carbon
Does that sound okay to you, John? I look to you for the wording there, but do we talk about sequestering and storing, or is it enough just to talk about sequestering?
I think at this point, given that the details will emerge in the staff report, it's just the matter of getting this concept into the notice for motion. And then it will be maintaining forests, it will be reforesting areas, and it will be possibly even including afforestation. But these concepts can be dealt with later in the staff report as details. I like the idea of moving it further up in the notice of motion because of, is the Climate Action Committee. And this will be fundamentally one of the drivers behind, I believe, our bylaw once we get that written.
Okay, thank you. So may I recommend that we vote on approval of this notice of motion with the amendment that we add the benefits of carbon sequestration in the beginning of the list of what the township values trees, that particular paragraph. Is that enough information for you to go on, Carly?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, so voting on this notice of motion as it stands with that one amendment, all in favor? And opposed? And that carries. Thank you. Good discussion. Okay, and the second notice of motion 10.2, and that is, well, I will read the wording here, and then I'll ask for someone to move and second for that to be put on the floor for discussion. So the recommendation is as follows: whereas the Township of Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Committee considered Resolution 2021-657 as passed by the Council of the Municipality of Grey Highlands at their meeting on November 5th, 2021. And whereas the Government of Ontario is planning to increase electricity generation and greenhouse gas pollution from Ontario's gas-fired power plants by more than 300% by 2030, and by 500% or more by 2040, reversing approximately 40% of the greenhouse gas pollution reductions achieved by phasing out our coal-fired power plants. And whereas greenhouse gas pollution is causing temperatures in Canada to rise at more than double the rate of the rest of the world, causing impacts to the operations and citizens of Georgian Bluffs. And whereas Georgian Bluffs is taking measures to mitigate and adapt to the climate impacts caused by increasing greenhouse gas pollution. And whereas the planned increase in the electricity-related greenhouse gas pollution will reduce the effectiveness of our greenhouse gas reduction efforts. And whereas there are feasible, cost-effective alternatives to increasing gas-fired electricity generation without increasing greenhouse gas pollution at costs well below the current price for Ontario's nuclear energy, 9.6 cents per kilowatt hour, including energy efficiency investments, low-cost distributed renewable energy, providing employment in Ontario communities and restoring our leadership in this industry. The purchase of low-cost power offered by the province of Quebec from its existing hydroelectric generating stations, and using Quebec's system of reservoirs like a giant battery to back up made in Ontario renewable power, eliminating the need to use gas-fired power plants for this purpose. And whereas the municipality whereas the Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Committee supports the Council of the Municipality of, sorry, I've lost my spot. Whereas our committee supports the Council of the Municipality of Grey Highlands in their request that the Government of Ontario place an interim cap of 2.5 megatons per year on the greenhouse gas pollution from Ontario's gas-fired power plants, and develop and implement a plan to phase out all gas-fired electricity generation by 2030 to help Ontario and Grey Highlands meet our climate targets. Now, therefore, the Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Committee recommends that the Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs ratify this resolution and further support the municipality of Grey Highlands, and that this resolution be sent to the municipality of Grey Highlands, the Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Energy, Northern Development and Mines, the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, Bill Walker. I wonder if we should have MPP Bill Walker, Lisa Thompson, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, or AMO. Wow, that was a mouthful.
Mhm.
Do I have someone to move that be on the floor for discussion? Thank you, Anne, and a seconder. Thank you, Bob. Okay, comments or suggestions, and please do not ask me to read that again. Anyone? Member Carlton.
Thank you. Wondering about adding FCM onto that list of who it's being sent to. There be any point there?
Yeah, good question. Comments? I don't, sorry, Bob. Sue is suggesting we add FCM to the list of folks that we would send this resolution to. Any comments, Trevor? Is that something you can make a recommendation on? Would it make sense in your experience to include them in the list of CCing?
To the chair, I've sat in on many meetings about this topic. I have not sat in on an FCM meeting that brought up this topic as of yet. So I don't know if it is on the radar or not.
Any other comments, Anne?
So if it's not on the radar, then maybe copying them would get it on the radar, which wouldn't be a bad thing. The other comment that I wanted to make is you mentioned, I think it is West Grey, that we're kind of modeling this on. There are at least 32 other municipalities in Ontario that have done similar motions, and I wonder whether it would be worth referencing that as well, so that it doesn't feel like it's just a West Grey thing that we're joining.
Right. So I think it's Grey Highlands, but yes. Yeah, it's a fair point. I don't know, Carly, would it be sort of extraneous to list all of the ones supporting it, or could we say the municipality of Grey Highlands and X number of other municipalities in Ontario?
Yes, I think that would be appropriate.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Anne. Thank you. It's always nice to hear that, you know, others are feeling the same way and not just one or two municipalities. Member Carlton?
Thank you, Chair Coburn. Just wondering, when Grey Highlands sent this out, did they send it out to just the other member municipalities within Grey County? Or often when we see these coming through, they get copied back to all 444 Ontario municipalities. That's not unusual to have them copied out that way.
Carly, can you respond to that?
With respect to this specific motion, I actually don't recall it being sent to Georgian Bluffs as correspondence. I did seek this out when I was doing the research when this matter did come to the table. So I'm not entirely sure which municipalities they sent that to.
I thought I recalled having seen it in the course of our council correspondence, but I could be wrong about that. And that would be the typical practice, is for them to send that out to the neighboring, at least the neighboring municipalities, if not all of them. I see Sue nodding her head.
I'm wondering if we saw this through the county then. Did they copy the county on it through the Climate Action Task Force up there?
Hi, I'm at a meeting.
I don't think it would hurt to send it out to all Ontario municipalities.
Does that work? Does that work for you, Carly?
Sure, that sounds great.
Okay, so we'll send it out to all. The only amendment I might suggest is adding the titles of the two MPPs that we've listed. I'm so sorry. It's there. did that just suddenly appear? Are you making corrections as we go along?
You're not going crazy. I am correcting them as we go along.
Thank you. That's brilliant. And I imagine Lisa Thompson is MPP as well. Correct? Or does she have another title?
She is also a minister of something, and I forget what it is now.
We'll leave that with you, Carly. I wondered if she had a ministry post as
Is
well.
she Minister of Agriculture now?
I believe she is.
Yeah, that's true.
Just as a matter of respect for those folks, we'll add their official titles. Okay, so other than that amendment, are there others? Over to you, Member Valleau.
I'm toggling back and forth between my picture of the minutes and you. This is a really small bit, but to me it just sounded really odd, and I'll read that part. It's just a second paragraph. Whereas the Government of Ontario is planning to increase electricity generation and greenhouse gas pollution. I don't think they're planning to increase. I think that's what's going to happen. And I think the whole thing would be much easier and less confusing to read if you took out "and greenhouse gas pollution," those words.
I wonder if we're using the template provided from the motion or the resolution passed by Grey Highlands, and that's probably the wording they used. Is that correct, Carly?
I'm not sure. Our clerk did put this notice of motion together, but if you would like to make any amendments or changes to the wording, absolutely.
Okay.
So you're talking about Danuta, the second paragraph?
Yeah, in the second line, whereas the Government of Ontario is planning to increase electricity generation and greenhouse gas pollution from Ontario's gas-fired power plants. I don't think they actually think that that's part of their plan.
Well, it does say that that's their plan by 2030 and 2040. So I'm not so sure we can say they're doing it now, but that is.
But they're planning to increase electricity generation by up to 300 or by more than 300%. The greenhouse gas pollution part of it is the effect of the electricity generation, maybe not something that they specifically are endeavoring to do. It's probably just a small point.
And to be honest, I'm not sure I'm following, so I will go to Member Gray next, please.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe if we just insert it "and therefore," to increase electricity generation and thus greenhouse gas pollution. Just add the one word "thus" there. I think that would clarify Danuta's point.
Okay, so by 500% or more by 2040, thus reversing approximately 40% of the greenhouse gas pollution reductions achieved. Does that make it a little clearer, do you think, Danuta? Okay. And I saw your hand up earlier. Is that something you want to comment on as well?
Yeah, I was going to make the same comment. I think it's by kind of putting these gas-fired power plants back in operation, the result will be the increase of emissions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so is everyone okay with that, inserting the word "thus" before reversing as part of this, as part of the amendment to this resolution? Nodding of heads, yes. Anyone opposed? No. Okay. Are there any other suggestions for our deputy clerk in terms of the wording in this resolution for council to consider? None. Okay, we have a mover and a seconder, I believe. Did I get that, Carly? I'm forgetting now.
Yes, we do have a mover and a seconder.
Okay, so with those discussed amendments, or that discussed amendment, adding MPP to Mr. Walker and Lisa Thompson's title, as well as adding the word thus to that second paragraph. I'll just call for a vote on this motion then. All those in favor? And opposed? And that carries. Okay, thank you. Do we have staff haven't joined us at this point in time? Carly, we don't have any staff members other than Trevor here.
I believe Steve is intending to join. I think they just got out of their other meeting. So
Okay.
if you wanted to discuss item 11.1 to give him some time to join us, that would be fine by me.
That makes sense. Thank you. Anne, I see your hand is up.
Just want a clarification. The last vote and that, was that a notice of motion or was that a motion?
That is a notice of motion that we are sending to council. It was a notice of motion for this meeting, but we are passing the motion to recommend that council adopt this resolution.
Okay, thank you. So it's not going to be followed up with another staff report and then, okay, so this is, I understand.
It will go directly to council is my understanding, and Carly may correct me, but it will go directly to council for their consideration as to whether or not they want to pass this resolution, similarly to the municipality of Grey Highlands. Carly?
Yes, that is correct. And these notice of motions will be included on the December 1st council meeting agenda.
Excellent. Thank you, Carly. Okay, so under new business, we had talked about future workshops, and I do see that this item is at the request of member Bylaw. Danuta, did you want to lead the discussion here for us?
I can, but I'm hoping that other people will join in. There's been we're sort of being held up in a way with waiting for a consultant to come on board and so on, in how we're acting towards our mandate. And in the meantime, it presents an opportunity to address areas of education, increased knowledge, opportunities for discussion, and to ask questions. So we're proposing that we could look at having workshops initially for staff and council members, perhaps, and so that we can, in a sense, have a better idea of a ground. To me, it means getting a level ground, basically, on where people are at and making sure that people's questions are addressed and that we're working together. But I'd like to hand that on to John. Perhaps I haven't given you much warning of that, John, but to perhaps come forward with some ideas that you may have had. And Luke, I think also supported that idea.
John or Luke, would you like to add some information to this particular discussion then?
I was multitasking and I missed what Danuta said.
John, I invited you to elucidate on workshops and what sort of content and audience you could consider of us getting together to make these feasible. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Thanks, Danuta. That's in fact what I was working on. So the concept and where I'm coming from are workshops that are really directed to staff, to municipal staff, much more than the community, although it can easily morph out into the community. And it comes from the workshops that were developed. I think there were 7 different workshops developed with the Niagara Adapts program, And now we are actively working on this with the city of Owen Sound as part of the CATOS work there. And we will be meeting again with the city next week with a formal proposal for this workshop. And what this workshop will start with is what our overall goals are. And we've defined 6 goals that we would like to achieve. The last of which is to make sure city staff are open to further workshops. I can share these goals with you if you like, and I can also share the structure of the much more extensive workshops that were developed for Niagara Adapts. But I think the thinking here is when you get senior staff on side, then they start to train and it filters down throughout the municipal staff. And then once you've got that in place, that's when you can really start going to the community. And so that's the concept.
Thank you. That flow that from senior staff to the rest of staff and then out into the community makes perfect sense to me. Perfect sense. So a couple of things. Because climate change is not unique to Georgian Bluffs, in sort of reducing efforts, I would hope that the workshops that are being developed for Owen Sound or other communities around here would be offered similarly to our own staff rather than reinventing the wheel. So that would be my if I may, my first comment. And my second one would be that because it takes time from staff to attend these workshops and also money because we're paying for them to take the time to learn. It is a bit of a staffing issue that I wonder if it needs to have some input from the Director of Operations as well, or our interim CAO. And I also do wonder if, Trevor, you might be able to comment on that, if there's an appetite for this kind of thing for senior staff currently, or is there training already being planned that we may not know about?
Through the chair to the member. So I am currently developing a stakeholder engagement strategy with Open North. So that strategy does incorporate both internal and external. And what we've developed or starting to develop the strategy is obviously not finished because you guys have not seen it, but when it is finished, you will see it. But for the internal portion, so we don't fatigue staff in talking about, I guess, over engagement and over consultation. We're going to incorporate both the official plan internal consultation with the climate action corporate plan consultation, because the provincial policy statement does incorporate climate change. So the official plan consultant would be discussing climate change with staff in the official plan update. And then that way we feel that we wouldn't be over consulting with staff on this issue.
Thank you, Trevor. That's good to know. I wonder if it's the same level of information, though, being provided through our official plan and the corporate, did you say the corporate action plan? Those plans tend to be fairly high level. And I wonder if that's the same level of education that the members of this committee are referring to. So maybe someone could clarify that as well. And I do see Luke's hand is up, so maybe we'll go to member Luke next.
Thanks, Chair Coburn. I think the other piece that we talked about last time was to make sure that we somehow maintain a momentum with council. Very much appreciate all the efforts to engage with staff and have workshops and all that. Nothing but respect and appreciation for that. But we also need to make sure that somehow we make sure that council stays informed and is up to date, so that the staff is not going too fast. That we do basically aligned in our in our collective learning about how to address some of these issues. And I don't know what the best venue is. I recognize there's a lot of meetings already, but I'm just recognizing the fact that we can't come up with a resolution and everybody is fully on board because we all have been maintaining momentum, and council says, well, where does this come from? And that it comes as a bit of a surprise to council, and that we then have to make a U-turn, or that we have to get people up to speed, or people said, well, if you would have told me a year earlier, I would have loved to be part of this process and I would have shared my concerns, and now you kind of put me a little bit in a funny position. So I think as part of that whole capacity building, that collective capacity building process, I wonder if there are creative opportunities to actually do that. And I don't have any concrete ideas other than to say, I see that as a bit of as a bit, I wouldn't say a risk, but it's something not to forget. And that because I think there is a possibility that we want to recognize the workload of council member, and therefore want to protect council members, but in the process of doing that, also withhold the opportunity for them to learn and to get up to speed about what we're doing. So just a point of attention and something that needs to be factored in as we move forward.
Thank you, and I appreciate your comments very much. I've said it before, timing is everything when it comes to engaging and consulting and educating. The other factor, as you all know, is that we're currently recruiting for our permanent CAO position. So, that's kind of another factor to throw in there in terms of timing. Although I think CAOs are certainly used to picking up those balls and running with them, particularly around climate change, where the talks are happening elsewhere at the same time. So I think I saw Steve pop on here. Steve, we're just having a discussion about the possibility of workshops to help educate a variety of stakeholders about climate change, and it was recommended or suggested that we start first with senior staff or with staff, and make sure they're well educated and aware and on board, and then we may move out to council and also to the community. Luke is pointing out that it might make sense to include council at the same time that we include staff, just so that they're not wondering if things are coming out of left field a little bit. I often wonder why we don't have more combined educational workshops with our staff and council, because a lot of times it's the same information we need to know, and it's kind of nice to know it at the same time, but that's just an aside comment from me. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
In that discussion as well, can we add mid-level supervisors as well? Because if you're going to do senior staff, you should be looking at doing the next staff round below as well. So your mid-level managers should be on board as well when we do that kind of communication or workshop. So just a suggestion. Yeah,
ideally it should be all of staff. I mean, all of our folks should be aware of the impacts of climate change on how they do business day to day, for sure. I guess it's just the timing of it all. Thanks, Steve. Over to you, Member Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Coburn. It would be really helpful for me if John could speak a little bit more about the kind of content of the training that he was talking about for staff that's being developed. I know that what Trevor talked about was kind of felt more like official plan things, kind of a higher level, but it would be really helpful for me to understand, John, what you were actually thinking about in terms of content. And that might also help in terms of looking at timing and who should be involved.
Yes, certainly, through the chair, Madam Chair. The strategy that we're developing in Owen Sound is slightly different than the strategy that was used in Niagara Adapts. with Niagara Adapts, they had professionals from Brock University that actually ran the workshop. So you could think of them as consultants, although they had joint funding that actually allowed that to happen. In our case, what we're considering is a workshop that would be run by the local climate action team in collaboration with senior staff at City Hall in Owen Sound. And so in that case, the first goal is positioning the two senior staff people we've been working with as climate leaders, and they actually would help to run the workshop with us. So that's the first goal. The second goal is then to determine the base knowledge among senior staff. And so we don't want to be overly redundant here. And given that there's a high level of initial climate awareness and literacy, it would tune the next step as to, the degree to which we enhance that awareness. The third goal that we've outlined is that we want to demonstrate the economic and social benefits of climate action, and we want to contrast the cost of inaction versus the cost, if you like, of action. Because when you look at the math, the cost of action is always cheaper than the cost of inaction. And then the third goal here is to develop a good understanding of the way the city, or in our case, the township, is positioned in terms to the regional and global challenges and programs that are available. So you think of this context that all three levels of government are now working quite aggressively towards climate action, and making sure we understand where our place is within that. And then recognizing, that the local climate action team, in our case, it would be Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Team, is a valued asset as part of this going forward. And then finally, making sure that it's open to further workshops. So that's kind of the starting goal. And it's not assuming that we'll get past a first workshop, but it's hoping that we do. And that's sort of the strategy that we've developed there in Owen Sound. And that is a template that could be transported anywhere where you had an engaged local citizens group, as we do, that would run this workshop. And I've made it very clear, I'm not running this workshop. We're going to do it as a team. Everyone's going to take a part and a role, and it's going to be a shared experience. And it will involve the two senior city staff at Owen Sound as climate leaders and teachers in this process. The other approach, of course, and this is perhaps one more that Trevor's pursuing, is to bring in a consultant. And that, again, could be very effective.
So thank you. That helps me understand the process a little bit. I have a couple of, I guess, questions or remarks. I wonder, I don't know where the city of Owen Sound is exactly in their response to climate action or climate planning, but the municipality of Georgian Bluffs has already made a commitment in declaring this to be an important issue and putting this committee together and backing it with funds. So I wonder if I'm just wondering if we head down this road, are we making the assumption that our municipality isn't as far along as we think it is? And I don't want to drag the process out. I also wonder how this intersects with the planning that we will have going forward, that Trevor's working on, and that our consultant will be working on. So, I mean, the whole thing has to kind of fit together so that we don't have different parts doing the same thing. And I don't know, Steve or Trevor, if you have any remarks to make along those lines. Steve?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the committee here, I would, I know you guys are waiting for me to give my report here, but I'd kind of try to see where we are with the consultant and ourselves, and then try to line up our schedules that way. Then when we come back to this committee in December here with the awarded consultant as well, then we can kind of hash out what our plans are, and then everybody can have an idea of where we're going, and then from there we can maybe kind of determine which way you guys want to go. But I would say if we could just wait till the consultant's hired on here, hopefully you guys agree with my report today, and we get it approved at council on December 1st, that we can get the consultant awarded here. Then we bring them back to this committee, and then we can kind of get everything kind of started hashed out and start moving all our programs faster and get stuff that we need to do to start to achieve in our timelines, right? So I would just kind of say hold off for now, but I leave it for this committee to make a decision.
Okay, thank you. And over to you, Anne.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to the four-legged critter that's joined the meeting. So one of the comments I wanted to make is I do think, Kathy, you said timing is really important. And I think we've identified kind of staff and staff's needs, but we don't know what they are because we don't know where they're at in their learning around this issue. Luke, I think you really articulated well the importance of kind of keeping council members kind of involved in the process so that we don't hit them out of left field when a recommendation comes forward. So I think that's a really important piece. But then we've got the consultant coming on. So it feels like we need to kind of plan it kind of together so there is the right sequence, the right timing to all. Each one of them is important, but if we get the timing off, then the work may not be valuable. That goes into it. So Trevor, you may be on, or not Trevor, Steve, you may be on to something in terms of maybe that's what we need to look at together. And I think what you're probably getting is a sense of urgency to move some things forward, but sometimes you need to slow down to speed up. And I wonder if this is one of them.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. I wonder, although I will say I found it valuable having the discussion about what John's working on with Owen Sound, because I wasn't aware of that. So I thanked Anuta for bringing that forward. And if we can just keep that sort of back of mind for now, that strategy is being worked on as we speak, it sounds like, John. And that might be a template for us to use or to integrate into our climate action plan as we move forward. Okay, any other comments about future workshops or skills development, staff training, council training? I think someone said earlier, we don't want council to be caught unawares. It would be, unless council is absolutely not reading anything, it would be very hard to keep to make council feel caught unawares when it comes to climate change, because honestly, the amount of information that comes through to us that addresses climate change in some way, shape, or form is astounding. So it shouldn't be new. It shouldn't be a surprise. Maybe I'm being a bit of a Pollyanna, but the information's out there and it's available, and we should all be reading it. And for goodness sakes, all you have to do is flip on the news these days when we hear what about the mudslides and what's happening out west, and we hopefully we can all make the connection and start to understand some of the urgency. So thank you for that. I wonder if it's okay with the committee if we leave that item and move back to the update from the operations side. I want to make sure we have enough time to discuss the RFP award. And so with councils, Anne, I see your hand is up. Is that from before, or is that? I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand. There you go. All right. I just didn't want to miss anything there. So I will turn it over, if I may, to Mr. Dolmeyer and Trevor, and hopefully you folks are ready to give us an update on what's happening operationally. Thanks, Steve.
Through you, Madam Chair, to committee here. So we'll start off with 8.1 there, the operational update. We have completed the updates to the work plan here from the comments we have received from the committee here. We're just waiting for the award of the consultant here so that we can merge everything together and meet with the consultant. Once we get the award of the consultant here approved by this committee, then also it will go up to council for their endorsement, and then we award it, and then they'll be here available for our December Climate Action Committee meeting. So at this moment in time, that's the update we have for operational wise. So is there any questions from the committee on that, on 8.1?
Questions or comments regarding the update on, that's the staff work plan you're referring to, Stephen?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Oh, Danuta.
Is there any opportunity for you to tell us more or send us, are the updates significant enough to share with us?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the committee here, we can send out this after this meeting here if everybody wants to see what's going on. It's not a big deal. I was just hoping to wait to get to the consultant here, and then we can kind of go through the whole package with the consultant in our next Climate Action Committee, and then kind of hash and do a kind of more of a workshop with them on that during our Climate Action Committee group there, and go through everything and then update and then provide everything back. But I have no problem with providing information today if you guys want.
Is that something that the committee members would like to see emailed out by attachment?
No. Okay.
Okay, so maybe not necessary at this time is the sense I'm getting. Thank you. And so moving on to 8.2. So this is the response to the RFP, and yeah, if you would like to take it from here, Stephen, and give us that report, that would be great.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with reading the recommendation to the committee here, just through you, Madam Chair, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, corporate staff report, corporate climate action plan, RFP 2021-24. That report OPS 21-55 be received, and that the Township of Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Committee hereby recommends that Council award RFP 2021-24, the development of a climate change action plan to Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions in the amount of $66,940, excluding HST, to assist the township in developing the corporate climate action plan. We will need a mover and a seconder to put it on the floor to discuss.
Would someone like to make that motion? This is just to put it on the floor for discussion. Thank you, John, and a seconder. Thank you, Anne.
Okay, through you, Madam Chair, to the committee here. So staff went out to tender for the corporate climate action plan. We posted this tender on Bids and Tenders online. It has over 4,000 subscribers to it that do a lot of bids and tenders. We also emailed quite a few of our local environmental consultants that do also climate action work as well and developing plans throughout Ontario. 3 tenders did come back to us from 3 consultants on this proposal. We received one from FC Consulting. We also received one from Panano. I apologize for the name there. And then also we received one from Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions. Staff went through all 3 RFPs that were received by these consultants. We did a proper review of each and all the qualifications, what their programs are, gone through all the documentation. Staff are coming back with the recommendation to go to Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions. They had the best for timelines. They have the skill sets and the knowledge to move us forward on this climate action plan, and they would be the best suited for helping us out when we use them for our current climate data from our weather forecasting systems for winter events and summer events as well. So we were looking at hopefully to award it through council later this month. The bids did range between $54,000 to $70,000, excluding HST, just so that you kind of have an idea what the price was. So overall, we figured that with Wood Environment, they would bring a better product to the table for the township, and this is why we're recommending them through this committee here to be selected, and then we move on to having council endorse it once the committee agrees. So I leave the floor open to everybody else.
Thank you, Steve. So that's over budget, correct? Had we not allocated 50,000 for this consulting in the 1 year?
That is correct, through you, Madam Chair. The remaining amount that would come back would be funded through the roads general reserve there, just to cover off the extra costs, and then we can kind of go from there as well, because we do have money in the reserves to balance out from other projects that we have done over this year, which would be a cost savings to the town as well for what we've done.
Okay, thank you. Luke.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question, and I show my ignorance here, but I just wanted to clarify that this RFP seems comprehensive, but I was a little bit, and I think I would like to have the opinion of other committee members, that this refers to a corporate climate action plan, and not like and I wasn't under the understanding that we were looking at a municipal climate action plan as the mandate for this, for basically the mandate for our committee. And just wanted to see how those two were dovetailing and how it all hangs together.
Yeah, so before I go to Steve, Luke, thank you. I had exactly the same thought. The way the document's written, it seemed to focus on, you know, our municipal operations and assets and infrastructure. And my understanding was that the climate plan, the consultant who would develop the climate plan would be developing a plan that was far more comprehensive than that it would take the whole of the municipality into consideration. So Steve, are we misunderstanding, or maybe you could clarify that for us? Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the committee here, that is correct. The consultant will be working on the corporate side. This consultant will be also working very closely with Trevor on the community side as well. So this is where Trevor and the consultant will be working and engaging on the community corporate action plan at the same time. They're going to be doing both plans at the same time. We were just hoping to have them work on the corporate side and then also assist with Trevor on the community side as well. So that's why we see a little bit more of an increase on the cost as well.
Okay, I'm still a little, I guess I'm still a little confused. So one of the important parts and the first step, the first milestone, is to measure emissions. Doing that from a corporate perspective should be pretty easy. I would wonder that we don't have the ability to do that in-house. Measuring emissions outside of our corporate operations, to me, and again, I'm showing my ignorance now, but to me, I would think that would be the difficult part, and that's the part we would want to hire the consultant to do. So I guess my question for Trevor is, do you have the tools that you need and the resources that you need to make an analytical kind of assessment as to what the emissions are in the community? Because we're not just talking about engaging and educating and awareness with the community. That comes later. The first step is measuring emissions. So do you have the resources you need then to do that, Trevor?
To the chair. So yes, as you clarified, it is a corporate plan that the consultant will be doing for both adaptation and mitigation. So for example, they will be going through not only operations, but planning and admin and the different departments, including our consultants. So for example, Aqua, and they will be compiling not only emissions data, but they will also be compiling data for a risk assessment, and that could include roads, culverts, current drainage systems that are in place, and parks and trails that the municipality operates. So anything that falls under the municipal corporate umbrella would be what the consultant would be doing. And so I would be aiding the consultant in finding that information and getting that information, because I am one staff. So I would have to, for example, if the consultant needed information, then I would put a request forward to whatever department. It could be Treasury if it's to do with maybe how much fuel was used in what year, or diesel, for example, and I would put that request forward. As for the community side, if the county does not provide the data, which I'm sure they will, because I am part of the community of practice, and it seems like that the county will aid us in that regard, then we will have access to the community data, which I will be able to take and work with the consultant to make the full picture, the big picture. I mean, if that were not to happen, then it would be me. I've already met with Enbridge Gas, for example. I would be meeting with the propane distributor. I would be calling the gas stations and getting an idea of what our current emission use under the municipality are. And then also I would be doing sort of a risk assessment in the terms of whatever else isn't managed by the municipality or the county would probably fall under the Conservation Authority or the NEC. And so I would be going to those agencies, which I've already preliminary talks as per our stakeholder engagement strategy, in which just doing the introductions and then seeing what is out there in terms of data. And then, for example, private property owners that have woodlots and road allowances that are under a private, then those are other things that we would be doing, and maybe that data is available through other projects. And this could also apply to the subdivision settlement areas as well, where they are privately operated, but we may, through other means, be able to access that data as well.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. I'm just going to loop back to Luke. Does that address your question or concern for now? I imagine there'll be more discussion on it, but you go ahead.
Yeah, and I think through you, Madam Chair, I agree with you that probably the municipal plan is probably the heavy lift in terms of if we ultimately want to have a municipal climate action plan, then I would think that there's probably a lot in terms of what you need to go through in terms of consultation and data information. And to me, but again, I'm not into this business, that sounds like the heavy lift in terms of coordination, discussion, internal debate. Whereas from a corporate perspective, it seems that, Trevor would probably have the easiest access to the information because you are part of that institution, and therefore probably seems that that's maybe a more straightforward. I'm just thinking about how can we get most bang for the buck, given the heavy lifting that needs to be done, and what is. And I fully assume that you guys have thought this through. I'm just thinking about what is, if you get 60 days or 40 days or whatever they charge out of a consultant, what is the best bang for the buck? Because we have only limited resources, and ultimately we want to see a climate action plan. And I'm just thinking strategically, if you look back and you say, okay, where do we want to be in a year from now, and what do we need to do to get there? Then I'm just thinking about how does it hang together? Because I didn't highlight it, but it also states that I think, Trevor, you're going to write the plan ultimately, not the consultant. And you wrote in the RFP that there's a fair bit of lifting that you said, okay, that's the responsibility of the staff as opposed to the consultant. So I'm thinking like, well, yeah, what is the plan, and is it most effective way of getting where we want to be as in a year from now or 2 years from now?
Yeah, those are fair points. Trevor, do you want to respond to that?
Through the chair to the member, yes, those are fair points. We were looking at it from a cost perspective. For the community side of things, the consultant would, when they were putting together their bid, would push for stakeholder consultation. And so they would have to go through all the stakeholders within the township, and also, for example, the Chamber of Commerce and the businesses that operate within the township and developers along those lines as well. the work that the consultant would be doing would be over a very long period of time, and the stakeholder consultation process that they would be undergoing would take an extremely large amount of time. If you, for example, my interactions with the Conservation Authority is in huge flux right now through negotiations and new memorandums of understanding, and they have staffing constraints as well as capacity constraint. So for a consultant to be waiting around for answers from the Conservation Authority, I mean, I don't think that would be a wise use of the time. Whereas if they can get in, lay the foundation for us, for example, a municipality, and from a development standpoint, and going through the updates to the official plan, the municipality manages a lot that has a lot of assessment value. Take, for example, what we do with roads and the settlement areas. And I think under a consultant with those expertise, I think that would be the best use of their time.
Okay, thank you. John, we'll go to you next if we can.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I think in this discussion, many of my initial questions have been answered. So just to summarize, we will have a consultant. Trevor will work with the consultant. We will be working on both the PCP mitigation plan and the BARC adaptation plan. So I guess I really just have two little questions left as part of this information sharing. One is I'm assuming you will actually work with the county, and that getting these emissions is really just kind of a straightforward accounting procedure. But that my question is, will you actually be working with the county beyond that? I mean, are there resources and a willingness at the county to work with us beyond just providing us the emissions data that they've had? And my second question, I'll give you my second question, I guess, also, how will you continue or work with BARC that I believe we paid $20,000 to join BARC, and there are resources there, and how does that dovetail into this work? Thank you.
Okay, Trevor, over to you.
Through the chair to the member. So the county has been, I'm in contact with Linda at the county probably once a week. We do have sit-down discussions outside of the community of practice. And so she has been extremely supportive. For example, I wanted preliminary information on their update to they're updating their tree cutting bylaw over 1 hectare. She directed me to the appropriate staff member that has the file at the moment. The staff member that actually has the file is on leave. So she directed me to that staff member, in which I could have a conversation with that staff member about their draft tree cutting bylaw to further inform the process that we may be undertaking here. So the county has been very supportive, and I don't see any issue there from staff to staff relationship. So talking to my counterparts, I don't see any issue at that level. At the senior management level, I don't know, because I'm not with the county. So I don't know what happens there internally. Perhaps members here would have a much better idea. In terms of the second question, if you can just elaborate again, John, and I'll be able to answer that to the member.
Yes, my understanding is when we joined BARC and we paid $20,000, it gave us access to staff that are with ICLEI Canada and their resources, their algorithms and modeling capabilities and so on. This is my current understanding, which of course you can update. Anyone that's worked through this would know exactly how that works, but that was my understanding, that the 20,000 bought us access to staff resources that included these kind of meaningful like algorithms and risk management issues. I mean, risk management is a established professional procedure and that kind of thing.
Yes, through the chair to the members. So as you have been talking to Caitlin, I'm sure. So Caitlin does not oversee this particular. She is support for the PCP program, but I have spoken to her. I have not been able to speak to within ICLEI other resource support. I will sit down with our interim CAO and just try to establish who was talked to, and that's how we kind of figured out who to discuss PCP with as well. And then see what supports. Caitlin has been, like, as you mentioned in a previous meeting, Caitlin has been extremely supportive. She directed me to the University of Waterloo and put me in touch with the programs there. And there might be possibility further down the road in 2023 to work with the University of Waterloo Master of Climate Change program. And so Caitlin has been incredibly supportive. But as you mentioned, we have to figure out how ICLEI is going to provide more resources as we have joined with ICLEI.
Okay, well, thanks, Trevor. I mean, this is all becoming much clearer. Maybe just one final question then. Do you see any role in going forward for this committee actually helping with some of this work?
It looks like Steve has his hand up, so yes, well, over to Steve.
So through you, Madam Chair, to the committee here. Yeah, once we start going down the stakeholder engagements and getting this data, you guys will be very involved in what we're doing. I see this committee really helping us out moving forward on this community component, considering that you guys are really invest with other community groups within our organizations and stuff like that. So I see this group being very helpful while we work with this consultant. I see this as more of a team approach. The consultant, yes, is going to look after corporate side, and I see Trevor looking at the community side, but I also see this community CAC group here working as a group here as well, along in conjunction with the consultant on both portions, right? Because there's going to be some spots on the corporate that's going to actually kind of fold over into the community component. So I see everybody here really working well together and being more involved. I'm trying to get this consultant. Once we get the consultant on board, then we can actually handle those proper discussions. And okay, where are we going? What's our next steps? Where are we going? How do we get to this step? Then we get more detailed on those work plans. Then we can say, okay, on this date, we're having a stakeholder meeting. On this date, we need to have this aspect done. And then it gets more into what you guys have been doing from the beginning. So I do see this committee moving forward. And then once the consultant comes on board, I see everybody working really tight together, even though they're working on corporate, but they are going to still help us on the community component as well, along with ICLEI and also PCP. I see a lot more other agencies helping us along this process. Talking with my counterparts in the lower tier around us, they are very interested in what they're doing, and they're really supportive as well, trying to help us out to move forward as well with this process. So they want to see what we're going to do because we're going to be the leader of how we're going to move us forward, but that's where they want to see how we go, and then they're probably going to follow behind us.
Okay, thank you. And over to you, Danuta.
Okay. Yeah, and as with everyone else, it's becoming a little more clear to me. But I have a bit of confusion, so I just want to share that, and I don't know if other people experience it too. So we're using terms of municipal climate action plan and corporate climate action plan and community. Is that municipal interchangeable with community? That's one of my questions. And there's already someone answering. I had a couple of other questions too. So
let's answer them one at a time, but I'll come back to you. I don't know how Steve feels, but when I hear municipal, I see big picture, all inclusive. It's the whole, it includes all of it. When I hear corporate, I think our infrastructure, our operations, our utilities. When I hear community, that's everything outside of corporate. So I don't know, Steve, does that fit with your definitions? Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the committee. My definitions are, if I say corporate, I mean just town hall in general, the assets at the town facility kind of deal with the public. Then when I say municipal or community, I mean the same thing. It's just, I use municipal for the whole broad spectrum of the whole township of Georgian Bluffs, whereas community is the same way in my language as well. But corporate is when I look at just the township itself, the township portfolio.
Okay, thank you.
does that mean, in other words, the municipal climate action plan incorporates the corporate and the community? Is that what you're saying? And so there would also be a community action plan in that case.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So there'd be the corporate, there's your community group, and then you have the municipal that looks after it all, combining everything together at the end.
Okay, so that's the first I've really heard of that that terminology and how it's separated there. And so looking back at the RFP or the recommendation that the Town of Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Committee recommend the RFP be awarded for the development of a climate change action plan. So it doesn't specify whether it's for mitigation or adaptation there. Doesn't say which or whether it's for both. And it doesn't mention up to what step of the plan. Is it going up to step 3 where it's in draft form and then you're looking at implementation? How far does that take us?
Thank you, Danuta. And before I turn that over to Steve, I had the same question, and I noted on the third attachment, there were some questions that came in regarding the wording in the RFP. And so I think there might have been some confusion by prospective bidders as well. If I'm reading this correctly, Steve, one of the questions is, can you clarify the scope of the corporate climate change action plan? Is it to also include a community action plan? And this points out that in PCP, there's both a community and a corporate stream. And while this person says, while it's clear in the project deliverables of the need for both, we are unclear if the community and corporate stream also apply to milestone 2 target and milestone 3, the plan. So I'm wondering if there was some general confusion out there. Maybe you can fill in the blanks for us. When I read these questions, I wondered if there was some ambiguity in the way that that was written. Go ahead, Steve.
Through you, Madam Chair, to committee here. So during the process of the RFP, there is a time to ask questions. And then once the questions get asked, then an addendum goes out to all the people that are looking at the tender here. So the plan takers that did pick up the RFP actually saw all the responses back on these questions that were asked to us before they even submitted a bid. So for this section, for that question there, Q3 there, yeah, we're looking at having the them complete the corporate milestones 1 to 3. And then when it hits milestone 4, then it'd be at the staff level to bring it in this committee here, to bring it forward to council through a staff report to get it implemented. Then at step 5, it's that milestone 5, that's your review of it the 1 year after it's been implemented for the 1 full year, right? So it was more getting them to get us to that point where we can write a staff report and then present it to the committee here, along with present it to council so that we can get this implemented and going. So that was the whole intention of that question there. They were asking about it. So we did clarify that we are looking at the corporate side, but at the same point too, when they are working with this committee and also Trevor, they will be we'll be kind of overlapping on stuff as well. So we'll be getting up to step 1 to 3 while this consultant's here, or milestones 1, 2, and 3. And then we'll be bringing a report back once we get milestones 1 to 3 done. And then this committee, along with council, will endorse to implement through milestone 4. And then we do the milestone 4 after 1 year of it being in place.
Did you have any follow-up questions from that, Danuta?
Just that you're talking about both the community and the corporate plan, or just the corporate plan when you say that? So
through you, Madam Chair, to the committee, the consultant will be looking after the corporate plan while we work on the community plan. Okay. So it'd be both plans being completed at the same time. All right. That's what we're doing.
Thank you. Okay, and I think, Anne, you were maybe next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So first of all, I'm going to start with a comment, and that is that given that we've paid money to BARC and we are also part of PCP and we have Trevor, and now we're taking on a consultant, it's really important, I think, for this committee and the staff team to take leadership and make use of the monies that have been paid out to the various players and make use of make the most effective use of that, because I know consultant time can go really quickly, and this is actually a pretty short window that this contract is. So I think there needs to be some really strong oversight and leadership. So that's a comment. My question is, I tried to Google the organization that the recommendation is for, trying to get a sense of what have they actually done, and they've got such a spiffy website. But but what I couldn't find is they worked with this community or that community or that community doing an actual climate action plan. So my question is, has this organization actually worked with a small rural community doing this kind of work?
Thank you, Anne. And before I turn it over to Steve, once again, we're all thinking along the same lines. I also Googled them. I could not find any examples of this kind of work with other municipalities. I'm sure hoping that Steve is going to provide us with a reassuring answer to this. Go ahead, Steve.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the committee here, we'll send you guys a list of all the communities that they've worked with in their documents that show that which communities they did do these action plans with. There was a lot of municipalities that have the rural and a little bit of urban components to it. That's what really kind of drew us in. They're not focused in on like a GTA urban area. They were looking at more of those rural municipalities up north, looking down in these areas as well. So there's some other key components that we were looking at when we did select this agency, but they had the best for looking at the rural kind of components like Georgian Bluffs environment kind of life with the water on the one side. You got your rural roads, you got a little bit of settlement growing here and there, but they were the best ones considering that overall the other ones were more focused in the GTA urban areas, where this had more of the rural approach to what they've done. They've also done climate action plans all over, not just Ontario, but also throughout the provinces of Canada. So we have like a really the expertise on this team that's going to be working with us would be very well really received here, and then the guidance they can give us as well when we move forward on all these other stuff that we're trying to work towards to get completed. They're going to provide us with a lot of guidance and knowledge as well. So that's why we kind of really focus in on selecting this consultant.
Thank you. And before I go back to Anne to make sure her question's been answered, I do have one, if I may. Is it common practice or best practice or even allowable for our staff to contact the other municipalities who have used this company's services to get their feedback and to hear if they were satisfied with the work that was done? And Steve, not to put you on the spot, but I think Sue and I can both speak for council. If at the end of the day, we have yet another consultant's report that is based on concepts and philosophies and not something that we can actually sink our teeth into and put into practice with actionable items and measurable objectives, it is going to literally sit on a shelf with all of the other consultants' reports, and council, I can tell you for sure, is not going to be happy about that, and nor should they on behalf of the ratepayers. So we just want to, I guess we're sounding like, you know, I'm sounding like a bit of a tyrant, but I just want to make sure that the product we get is what we're actually expecting. Go ahead, Steve.
Through you, Madam Chair, to committee, thank you for the comments on that. Every person we go to select for any tender within the township, we do a reference check with municipalities that they reference, just to make sure that they are following suit to what we need. And that's one of the things with this company too, is we did follow up with some of their lower tier municipalities that have the same settings as us, as Georgian Bluffs. We did follow up with them and did the reference check. And the deliverables of that they provided to those municipalities, they're actually implementing them and still going forward with them. So when we look at this company, this is what we were hoping, that we wanted deliverables, we wanted KPIs, we want to be able to bring stuff back to this committee council on a quarterly basis and say, yes, this is the next task in their list. This is what we've achieved. This is what we're doing for KPIs. This is the weather coming in data and stuff like that. So that's something that we really took into consideration when we were doing this, because we don't want in our report just sitting on the side of a desk of, this is your best idea of what's going on, like some of the other reports we have received here in the past. Right. So we are looking to make sure that this is something that is tangible and is easy for us to implement and continue implementing for years to come.
Right, and effective, not
Correct.
just tangible and easy, but also that it's going to make a difference, right?
That's correct.
So now I'm forgetting who I was to loop back to. Anne, was that your original question? And does that answer your question? Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go over to Luke now. Luke, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I think, Steve, you probably answered the questions I'm looking at, I'm a consultant, and I would not take this contract. And the reason is that I see a number of deliverables and I see a timeline, and I'm thinking, yikes, that's pretty steep for 4 months. Now, if they want to do it, that's great, fantastic. And the fact that it's a corporate climate action plan, that makes it more manageable, I would say. My question, though, is, and I'm happy that they take it. My question, though, is they have committed to these deliverables, because you get what you pay for, right? So you get 50 days and that's it. And then afterwards, they're going to say, well, sorry, but, there's a risk of cutting corners. I just want to make sure that they have bought into the deliverables, because we haven't seen the proposal from their side.
Thank you, Luke. That's a good question. Steve.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the committee. Yes, we did review their deliverables, because when they provided their proposal, I think it was roughly about 200 pages long of all the credentials and all the knowledge that they have and what team members are going to be part of it. It is a big team they are going to be bringing to the table, but they did provide us a list of the deliverables, and they are going to achieve all the deliverables that were listed in this RFP.
Is there a contingency plan within the contract that has to do with payments if certain deliverables are not met within a certain timeline, Steve? Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the committee, that is correct. Every new tender that we do here at the township does have liquidated damages. So if they don't meet certain deliverables on certain times, then they go into the liquidated damages, which then it comes back on to the township for reimbursement instead of us paying out. So those are something that we've implemented here in the last 12 months. So it's been really very effective on a lot of our tenders as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions regarding the proposal here that Steve is recommending? I'm not seeing any more. Okay, so hopefully Carly's still with us after all of that. I'm going to read, and I think we got a motioner and a seconder for this recommendation, Carly. But before we vote, I'll just read the motion again, that the Township of George and Bluffs Climate Action Committee hereby recommends that Council award RFP 2021-24, development of a climate change action plan to Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions in the amount of $66,940, excluding HST, to assist the township in the development of a corporate climate action plan. So if there is no more discussion and there are no more questions, I would just ask for votes to approve this motion. Those in favor? And it looks as though that is passing. So that motion has passed. Thank you, Steve. Do you feel like you've been in front of the firing squad a little bit here? Apologies.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the committee. No, I don't. This is what I'm here for.
Awesome. Okay, I think we are to the end of our agenda then, unless I've forgotten something, in which case I know Carly will keep me in line. Number 12, are there any further notices of motion to bring forward at this time? Seeing none. There is no closed session, at least that I'm aware of. And so the date of our next regular meeting is December 16th at 10 a.m. And we will see you all then. So I would just ask for adjournment of this meeting. All in favor? Thank you. And we will see you all next time, folks, on December 16th. Thank you, and thank you to staff.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.